models of early childhood education. Behaviorism. The focus of this philosophy of behaviorism is basically oriented on teaching and developing certain predetermined behaviors. With behavioralism, it's very much focused on repetitive actions, getting answers to things, and having feedback because what we would like the children to do and the desired behavior is based on observations and things that we can see. The teacher, in this case, is the one that's basically in control of the program. They set the learning objectives and they also set and assess the skills and knowledge. Some of the terms that we use are pedagogy or directed learning. For behavioralism in education, this would be a preschool or a classroom that's very much teacher focused, teacher directed, it's fast paced, everything is focused on a task, a drill, a repetitive or learned skill based on testing and trying sessions. It is controlled by consequences and it depends, and the learning will depend on the outcome. So, whatever the behavior is, followed by a positive, rewarding event, would be considered a consequence, and that would make a behavior become stronger. So, that's positive reinforcement. If the behavior is followed by no reinforcement, it will become extinct. And if it's followed by an adverse or a negative event, then which could be perceived as punishment, then the behavior will weaken. Some of the theorists that we look at under that behaviorist approach or behaviorist theory are Ivan Pavlov, B.F. Skinner, and John Watson. The key and overarching idea of a behaviorist theory is that learning is shaped by environmental responses. Pavlov's experiment with the dog and the food and the bell really was the first initial look at classical conditioning. B.F. Skinner and his theory was reinforced with a rat and a lever, and the reward and punishment concept comes from that notion. And Watson basically was the first to condition a human. So he conditioned a baby to have fears from a animal or an object that they weren't having fears from before. So Pavlov learned that you can condition an animal. B.F. Skinner very much focused on reward and punishment and that being motivators of behavior. And Watson was the one to condition a human being. For essentialism, it comes from idealism and realism. Essentialism is a teacher-centered educational philosophy, and it emphasizes learning skills through traditional subjects. So these traditional subjects are reading, writing, math, and science. So these are the basic subjects, and the thought is that children should be learning these within programs. So in the classroom, the values are focused on the core subjects and the children deepening their knowledge about these core subjects. So the three basic principles of essentialism is that there's a core of knowledge, you work hard and you have to have mental discipline, and that the teacher is central to that sort of environment and instruction. Some of the examples are also for essentialism is similar to our school system today, where there are subjects, periods, assessments for knowledge. Once you've achieved a certain level of understanding, you move up in grades. These sort of concepts are still existent in our school system today, and they seem to resemble that of essentialism. For social reconstruction, it's very different because this focuses on reconstructing society, thinking about society in a different way, making the child that social agent for equitable societies and rebuilding where we need to rebuild and reforming where we need to reform. So with this concept, it's different from essentialism because essentialism is keeping everything the same, status quo, and teaching children those core skills. And social reconstructionism is looking at what we have and what we may need to evolve or change. To make it better based on society in that specific time frame and the needs of society. Um, it's idealistic in nature, and it really encourages schools to teach children to dream as to what they could be or what they could do. Whereas essentialism is more, let's keep society the way it is. And in order to do that, you need to learn these skills that everybody has learned at this age, at this time, based on these assessments. Never help a child with a task at which they feel they can succeed. This comes from Maria Montessori. Reggio Emilia is a model of early childhood education. The approach is a philosophy that focuses on preschool and primary education. It is child centered and very much focuses on the children in that environment and how they can learn in that environment. Lorenz Malaguzzi was one of the developers of Reggio Emilia, and he's the first one to come up with the concept of the view of the child, as well as 100 languages to express ideas. And it talks about how children express themselves in many, many different ways. And that was the metaphor and the concept of the 1,000 languages. The approach really focuses on the child. It's relationship driven. It is very much focused on the role of the teacher as a partner. The community is a huge part of Reggio Emilia, as it was started within the community and started by the community, with everybody working together and providing the resources and materials and everything that the program needed and the children needed. So having that key involvement of parents, they are the program and they are part of the program rather than being invited into the program. They were there to help create and design that program. The children, it's very child-centered where they get to make their choices, and the environment is seen as that third teacher where it has a role because it's intentionally designed and it's aesthetically pleasing for those children, and essentially and designed in a way that is significant to the children and their needs within that learning environment. For the comparison, when we look at Reggio Emilia and emergent curriculum, sometimes they're seen as similar in the sense where they are both child-centered. They both look at the child being that active participant and really supporting their learning. They both have this strong sense of the role of the educator, and that role is for them to teach and facilitate or co-learn with the children. They do observations, they support inquiries, and they do this rather than directing the children or telling them what to do. They both have a similar project-based learning approach, which is really letting children have their interests, but really building and extending those interests by giving them skills, answering questions, giving them resources, and really making those projects long term so that they're really getting the most out of the information. So this would be where the teacher fills in that role of, you like a certain thing, you're interested in something, let me help you expand on that. Some of the differences are in the Reggio Emilia model, they are more intentional about the environment being the third teacher, in the sense where they design it to be natural, they design it to be aesthetically pleasing, and they design it with an artillery, which is really an area where the children can complete activities, but others can see them within that learning space. So the learning environments are a little bit different, although both intentional. Reggio places a stronger emphasis on the intent and the purpose of that learning environment. The community involvement is significant because the community helped build the Reggio Emilia approach. So the community involvement is the teachers, the parents, and the families really working in partnership to create or design what's happening in that learning space based on children's interests. And it's not solely let's have a barbecue, let's have an open house, and inviting you to come in to see what we're doing. The family was very much involved in what was going on and how it was built or developed. So they're a partner in that. The 100 languages is very different as well because the Reggio Emilia approach really focuses on that metaphor for really allowing children to express themselves. And it's expressing themselves in a variety of different ways. It's verbal, it's through art, it's through expression, their exploration, their interests. It really is a variety of ways that children can express themselves, and which Malaguzzi calls the 100 languages. The Reggio Emilia approach it's widely recognized as an example of emergent curriculum, and this is why they have several similarities as well. The teachers are collaborators and facilitators with the children, and they are allowed to be creative, and there's very much an emphasis on the artistic expression. The Finland school system, it focuses on equity and inclusivity. There's a focus on high quality teachers. So the teachers do have a high degree. So they have a higher, level of education and higher learning. And this supports them in how they teach. Finnish schools also have a focus on well-being, as well as personalizing education. The one thing you will need to consider are the philosophical connections. Start thinking about the connections between the resources you use, the theorists you've learned, the concepts that you've heard of, the information that you can consider. Really think about the connections. Where have you heard competent, capable, and curious? Where have you heard that? What documents have you heard that in? Can you find the philosophical foundation of that concept? Children being rich in potential. Where else have you heard that? What other document or resource do we hear that in? How many models of education or early childhood education use that same concept or phrase or thought process or theory? Adult-child interactions and relationships, child-centered, image of the child, environment as the third teacher or the teacher, play as an essential part of development, holistic development. Start thinking of those theorists and start thinking of the different individuals where you hear these philosophical concepts with. Start making those connections. Where can we put them together? How does learning happen? Think, Feel, Act, the Child Care in Early Years Act, Malaguzzi, Froebel, Piaget, High Scope Curriculum, Reggio Emilia Curriculum. Start thinking of the different connections, and the fact that when we talked about in the beginning was that a lot of these concepts come from ideas, and there are philosophical beginnings and philosophical foundations for much of the concepts that we see in education, and really start connecting the dots so that it can in turn help you understand the foundation of early childhood education, and the philosophy for children in the early years.